Good morning. EUROUZ is here in Samarkand at the EBRD annual governors meetings. This morning we're going to have a short conversation with Vice President of European Commission Dombrovskis to ask his views on how we can further enhance cooperation between the European Union and Central Asia, and to see his outlook for the upcoming event, second Central Asia EU Connectivity Forum in Almaty. EUROUZ is the only EU-wide Chamber of Commerce today in Uzbekistan, protecting and supporting EU business interests in the country, developing economic relations between EU and Uzbekistan, and doing whatever we can to support also Uzbekistan's companies developing and entering the European Union market. Okay. Vice President Dombrovskis, welcome to Samarkand. I hope you are having an efficient time here.
Good afternoon. Yeah, indeed, it's a pleasure to be here to see the city, but also obviously engage both bilaterally with Uzbek authorities and in the EBRD annual meeting.
EUROUZ is the only EU business association today in Uzbekistan. And first of all, I'd like to thank the European Union for the support that we have been receiving here, for supporting and progressing the economic relations between Uzbekistan and the European Union, and supporting the EU business interests here in Uzbekistan. I will start with asking you that both political and economic relations between EU and Central Asia as a whole, and also particularly with Uzbekistan, have been developing very, very dynamically in the past years. And what I want to ask is, what are the key driving factors from the EU side for that increased level of cooperation?
Indeed, we see quite dynamic developments in terms EU and Uzbekistan engagement, including economically and in area of trade. And I would say that on one hand shows strategic importance which EU attaches to Central Asia and Uzbekistan in particular, but it's also a reflection of the reform process which Uzbekistan has engaged in under leadership of President Mirziyoyev, because indeed we see that there is an opening up of Uzbekistan for business, for economic engagement, improvement of business environment, and those are all important drivers for us being able to strengthen our economic and trade ties.
In short, how would you describe the fundamental strategy behind the EU trade engagement with Central Asia today?
Well, as I was mentioning, we see Central Asia as a strategic partner, so we're willing to enhance and broaden our cooperation, not only in area of economy, but also politically. Of course, right now, many issues are shaped by Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. And the important topic, for example, is a question of avoidance of sanctions circumvention, also something I'm raising with authorities in Central Asia, including during this visit. But we see also lots of potential for cooperation in new areas, where our economies are now engaged in a process of green and digital transitions, and in this context we see potential in cooperating in areas like renewables, on also raw materials, because green economy requires different inputs. We are developing our digital partnership with Central Asian region, so one can say that from the EU side we will continue to be engaged and willing to deepen our ties both politically and economically.
Thank you. The EU pays a lot of attention to specifically a regional approach and in its economic and trade engagement, as reflected in the upcoming EU Central Asia Economic Forum starting today in Almaty, to which I believe you are going very soon. What are your expectations towards that event? And can you share also perhaps what are the EU plans to further foster connectivity between the two regions?
Indeed, just after this EBRD annual meeting here in Samarkand, I will be going to Almaty for a second EU Central Asia Economic Forum. Well, we will build on what was a very successful first forum in Bishkek. We already agreed a number of areas of work, of cooperation, so we'll be developing this. In terms of connectivity, that's indeed an important question, and together with EBRD, we're also developing a study on connectivity between EU and Central Asia, also now in a context that we cannot really rely on transport corridors via Russia, so we need to see what are the alternatives. So we are doing the assessment of alternative transport corridors, their economic viability, and then we'll be willing also to attract financing, both from EU and private financing, to address the bottlenecks and improve the connectivity, because that's one of the key questions for using full potential of our relations.
One of the missions of EUROUZ is to also support the Central Asian and Uzbek particular companies going into the EU markets. And my question would be also, what message do you have for Central Asia's business community, despite the new trade facilitation mechanisms being implemented? Many companies here, particularly locally in Uzbekistan, but we know also beyond Uzbekistan in Central Asia, often still hesitate to focus on the EU market for growth, and because EU, of course, has more complexity. It has more import controls than traditional export markets, perhaps. Some of them are Russia and China. So what kind of message would you give to encourage the Central Asia's business to work more with Europe?
Yeah, well, first of all, I indeed would encourage to use the opportunities which are there. For example, since 2021, Uzbekistan is benefiting from the generalized system of preferences plus, which gives Uzbek goods privileged access to EU market. We have concluded now economic partnership and enhanced partnership and cooperation agreement with Uzbekistan. It's now being prepared for signature. It will provide new opportunities. So it's important that those opportunities are being used. In terms of access to EU market, indeed, EU has quite high, quite strict quality standards in different areas, starting from food and ending with machinery. But on the other hand, we have clear and predictable rules. So businesses know what is expected, and if they are able to meet those standards, there is a predictability that those businesses can actually gain access to the EU market. And we are ready actually to facilitate the understanding of business of EU standards, EU requirements, so that this potential can be used to fuller extent.
Vice President Dombrovskis, thank you very much for your time, and I wish you efficient continuation of your trip in Central Asia. Thank you.
Thank you.